The last known survivor in Britain to fight in the Spanish Civil War has died at the age of 94. Born in Manchester to Polish immigrants, David Lomon was one of 800 Jewish soldiers who volunteered to fight against Franco in the 1930s. In order to become less conspicuous in a time in which anti-Semitism was rife in Europe, he changed his name from Solomon to Lomon, a fact he said would later save his life. The Spanish Civil War erupted when Francisco Franco's nationalists rebelled against the elected government of 1936, in a war which lasted 3 years and was marked by the number of atrocities committed on both sides. Despite pleas from the Spanish government for help, Great Britain maintained a policy of non-intervention throughout. Those living in Britain who felt compelled to participate could do so by joining the International Brigade, who organised their arrival into Spain. Richard Baxell is an author whose last book, The Unlikely Warriors, details the story of the ordinary men and women who volunteered to fight in Spain and who was lucky enough to meet David in the last years of his life. He helped explain why a British gentleman would end up fighting in a Spanish war.
David grew up in Manchester. He was a young Jewish boy, grew up in Manchester, and when in his mid-teens, his father died and he had to move to London. And he moved down to the East End of London, which at that time was a very much a Jewish area. And it was in the midst of the campaigns by Sir Oswald Mosley and the fascist black shirts to intimidate the Jewish communities in Britain. They would send essentially foot soldiers into the area to sell newspapers, to terrorize the local population. And David, as a young Jewish man, obviously saw and experienced this for himself. David was actually born David Solomon, Jewish name, Jewish sounding name, and he was aware that with a Jewish surname, there was a possibility that he was going to be targeted. So he decided, very sensibly I think, to shorten his name from Solomon to Lomon, and he volunteered for Spain as David Lomon.
Richard recorded an interview he conducted with David not long before he died, asking him about what memories he still held from that period of his life.
And of course then was the Hitler period came up. Being Jewish, I felt that I had to take part in something to stop them. I wanted to go to Spain, so I joined the Young Communist League, just because I thought these were the people who I could use to get over to Spain. But I didn't actually join any political group. I wanted to do something. I wanted to fight fascism.
David Lomon finally arrived to the region of Aragon to see the tail end of the Battle of Teruel, one of the fiercest and most direct confrontations of the Spanish Civil War. 13 people from his company were killed in this battle, which saw a town with a population of only 20,000 witness the deaths of an estimated 140,000 soldiers.
Teruel fue importante porque justo en el momento en que se libró la batalla de Teruel.
Teruel was important because the Republicans wanted to stop Franco and his troops from taking the city of Madrid. The Republicans decided to attack this city because if they conquered it, they could have a direct route through to Valencia, and at the same time it served as a distraction to stop Franco from taking the capital.
Para que Franco no consiguiera ocupar la ciudad de Madrid.
And what were the conditions like in Teruel for the soldiers at that time?
We have to remember that at that time it was winter. We are talking about December 1937 and January 1938. Temperatures of around -20 degrees Celsius were reached. And let's not forget that today in the 21st century the conditions in the houses were not the same as what they had at the start of the 20th century. Teruel is famous for its cold weather, and we believe that -20 degrees is the coldest that the city ever experienced in the whole of the 20th century. Behind us we have one of the examples, that is one of the 2 buildings that still have the original bullet holes from the Battle of Teruel.
Although he managed to escape the Battle of Teruel unharmed, Mr. Lomon was later captured in Calafate, a small town located on the border of Aragon and Catalonia.
All I know is I woke up, I was unconscious, I was woken by a Moorish Italian. They put me in the back of a truck and it just drove me off, you know. It was not far from the coast. There was about 50 POWs from all over.
He was locked up there for a couple of months in extremely brutal conditions. None of the prisoners were actually killed, but they were all beaten up. Many of them were interviewed by the Gestapo. They were kept on starvation rations. Anybody with injuries or sickness was very lucky if they got any medical attention at all.
Mr. Lomon, who was later awarded an honorary Spanish passport, said that losing the war was a big blow. However, it was not enough to stop him from enlisting for World War II, about which he would later reflect, "We won that one." This is Paul Walsh for JN1 in Teruel.